Hi Russell, this is John Vigory. I did agree to take you on in a discussion about global warming, maybe more precisely anthropogenic global warming, maybe more precisely the claim that the science is settled about anthropogenic global warming. So there's a lot of jargon thrown around. There's a lot of scientific and non-scientific terms. There's a lot of emotionalizing. There's a lot of elevating opinion to facts. There's a lot of bias and mumbo-jumbo out there, certainly. You did present a case about 8 minutes long. I really hate to start a debate and rebuttal, but since you wanted to go first, I will have to divide my own rebuttal of your narrative into multiple videos. It's not that there's so much wrong with it. It's just that the parts of your narrative which are the most compelling really deserve the most attention in terms of understanding the precision that's necessary to and the accuracy and the completeness of data that's necessary to really back up a claim of, basically we're talking about fractions of degrees, perhaps up to a degree, perhaps up to a degree plus fractions of a degree. The very precise nature of some of the claims that are out there, also demand some very extraordinary proof with regard to completeness, accuracy, and precision. So I think what I'd like to start out doing is, once again discussing that the main difference between perhaps someone like myself who's gone through undergraduate curriculum in physical sciences and other folks who are learned, smart, educated, and ability to conduct reasoning in an adult consensus reality fashion. It's not the power to perform abstractions. I think you laid out a very commonly subscribed abstraction about temperature, precipitation, and wind speed that is accessible to just about everyone. But what I really want to focus on is two things. I'm going to state that my position is that an index of climate condition, which consists of three factors: wind, temperature, and precipitation, is a very narrow index of the climate condition. You yourself in your narrative named many other aspects of the natural world that come into the mix with regard to the cause and effect of why the climate does what it does, why the weather does what it does, what are the expected cycles and patterns of climate, then what are the evidence in the natural world around us thereof. I claim that a index of those three factors is biased toward humanity and really not a reflection of the actual physical and scientific realities on the planet. There are many aspects that you yourself named which are would be more important to more precisely understand, so that we could get a better grasp of the very short-term behaviors of weather patterns and climate on the planet. I'd like to point out that human beings are not the dominant species on the planet, never have been. They're not, certainly at this time. Human beings can only occupy a very small percentage of the entire surface of the planet. We live in a very narrow band of temperature. We live in a very narrow band of elevation. We live in a very narrow band of access to water. We are basically, beholden, stuck to different conditions due to our very weak physical nature. We have, very limited faculties of sight, smell, hearing, taste, sensory perception, body, sense of our body position in space. Those things are great in so far as there's an existence in a space that we occupy in the natural world. But the dominant species on this planet is microbes. They're things that we can't even see with our own two eyes. You could imagine that beings on our planet have sensitivity to other things that are more important in determining what the weather, the climate is at any given time, like the temperature of the ocean, the composition of the ocean, the composition of the atmosphere, the amount of pressure exerted by the atmosphere, the amount of radiation which is coming onto the surface or even below the surface of the water, for example, or up in the highest elevations. The composition of the number of microbes and the type of microbes and the population of microbes in the ocean has a lot more to do with what the composition of the atmosphere is than what anything that human beings do. I mean, literally every gulp of air you take is gas that was generated by organisms that consume gases and emit oxygen. So, the color of the ocean, the composition of the atmosphere. Human beings are only very late to the party here on Earth, consisting of a few 100,000 years, give or take, and, coming after hundreds of millions of years of other dominant beings roaming the Earth and the planet and having to grapple with the natural world around them, brought them to extinction. So think about the bias that goes into the discussion about weather and climate. Think about the fact that temperature, rainfall, and the wind speed is a very biased perspective, a very narrow perspective, and doesn't even take into account factors which are much more deterministic in what the outcomes are, not just for human beings but for every other organism, every other type of life on the planet. So I'm not even talking about bias in the conclusions. It's been shown over and over that there's an alarmist tone. There is a lack of balanced treatment with regard to how certain, how probabilistic the pretty wild claims that are sensational in the headlines are likely to pass. I take the view of being involved in the technology business for about 25 or 30 years that we have actually very little data to work with. And if you're talking about a very high standard of accuracy, if you're talking about a high standard of completeness, we have even much less data than that on which it's possible to mathematically or quote-unquote scientifically conclude that it's absolutely certain that a wild upswing in temperature, which will make sea levels rise and melt all the polar ice caps and somehow doom us into a completely different natural cycle. My claim is simply this: there is not enough evidence, nor does the evidence which is accurate and we have support the conclusion that human activity is the driving force behind the change in the pattern of temperature. We have in our community actually a real live funded scientist, researcher who works on these issues. Her name is Carol Woodward. She graduated in 1987 from Louisiana School, and she works at the labs in Livermore. So recently she updated me about some of her work on mean surface temperature, and we had an interesting conversation. You know, I absolutely support the notion that we need to perform more research, we need to continue to collect data, and we need to continue to fund research that is a study of cause and effect of you know, what is actually going on, without a biased starting conclusion that suddenly, you know, the gases that we exhale, CO2, has become something on the order of mercury, sulfur dioxide, you know, that this is an outcome of our economic development, industrialization, and you know, technology, that we must abandon all petroleum or you know, so-called carbon-based forms of energy. I just don't think that throwing away our economy would allow us to pursue the technological directions that we need to build a more sustainable environment around us. So being skeptical about wild claims of doomsday weather events that are imminent unless we completely abandon our way of life, I believe, are way over their skis in terms of the actual data that's available to us. I believe that there is an infectious bias that is not only in the conclusions and the narratives that are propagated out there, but I believe the bias begins when we define climate in a way that is lacking perspective of humanity and you know, our actual ability to control and affect the natural systems that we're just a part of. So Russell, that's the phone. I gotta go. We'll talk to you soon, and get started on that next video.